For the last month or so, every time I've left the house and I know that I'm not going to need my phone while I'm out, I leave the phone at home on purpose. It's not dead. I don't need to leave it at home to charge. I look at it sitting on the counter, I see it there, and I still decide to walk out without it. The first few times I did this, it felt really strange. It felt like I was leaving the house without my wallet or without my keys, something that I absolutely needed to go anywhere. I would drive about 100 feet down the road and I would already start patting my pocket, checking for my phone that wasn't there, and something already felt off. After a couple weeks of doing this though, something happened that I didn't expect, which is I got smarter. Now I need to be careful what I mean by that because I know that sounds like a crazy claim and a crazy title, so I'm gonna clarify exactly what I mean by that and what I don't mean. If you haven't watched me before, my name's Charlie. I used to spend 6 or 8 hours a day doom scrolling my life away. Now though, a couple years later, I've managed to fix this problem, and this channel is about helping other young guys to overcome their digital addiction. So I'm sharing on here what has worked for me. One of the strangest things that actually worked for me is one of the simplest sounding ones, which is to leave your phone at home. I'm going to explain exactly why I did this and what it did for me, because it's probably not what you're thinking, so I'm going to explain the exact mechanism that this helped me out with. Let's get rid of the obvious interpretation first though. When I say I got smarter, I don't mean that my IQ actually went up. I don't mean that I started solving hidden math equations all of a sudden, or that I unlocked some secret area of my brain. That is not it. What I actually mean is that I could think again. And you might be thinking, that sounds like quite a weird thing to say. You're thinking right now, Charlie. But I want you to stop and honestly consider something for a second. When is the last time that you really thought something through? Last time you had your own original thought, a real one, and one that you thought through until the very end. Not a reaction to something else that you saw, not an opinion you got from someone else's video, but an idea that actually stemmed from your mind and that you followed through to its conclusion. For a lot of guys that I've spoken to, their answer to that question is, I don't know, it's been a while. And it's not because you're stupid, it's not an intelligence problem. You have the same brain that the smartest version of you would also have. The capability is all there already. You're just never letting the engine of your brain start and continue to run. So when I say that leaving my phone at home made me smarter, I don't mean that I suddenly had a huge rise of intelligence. I mean that I got more access to the intelligence that I already had. Think about the difference. One is about how big of a brain, how much of an IQ you actually have, and the other is about how much of it that you can access. You can be sitting on a huge amount of thinking power and brain power and never even scratch the surface of it because you're not giving it the opportunity to do its thing, which is to think deeply. That is where you're most likely living. You're not dumb, but your brain has been blocked, and the phone is very likely the thing that is blocking it. Here's the first way it does that, which is a very simple one, but also probably the most common. And that is, whenever you have a boring moment in your day, something on your phone is always there to fill it. You are constantly all day long consuming other people's thoughts. Someone else's opinion, or someone else's joke, or someone else's take on an issue that you probably shouldn't even have a good reason to care about in the first place. One thing I want to note really quick, some of that stuff is fine. A lot of it's even good. I'm not saying that every single thing that you consume will rot your brain. Not all content out there is bad. However, that's not the point of this video. The point is the sheer volume of information you're consuming. There was a statistic I was reading a couple weeks ago that said in the 1980s, people were consuming about 40 newspapers worth of information every day. Whether that was the newspaper itself, or a book, or the radio, or the TV, whatever technology they had back then, it added up to about 40 newspapers per day. However, that number in 2007 had risen to 174 newspapers a day. And 2007 is almost 20 years ago now. That's basically ancient history. That was before the smartphone with the internet in the pocket was even a mainstream thing. So I couldn't even imagine what the number is now. It's off the charts. Hundreds of newspapers per day of other people's thoughts being poured directly into your head. The question that this led me to ask is, if you're taking in 174 or more newspapers worth of information of other people's ideas each day, does that really leave you any time to generate your own thoughts? There's no room there. That's the whole problem. There is mentally no room in your brain. Your inner world and inner monologue is so packed with other people's content that any ideas you would have don't even get the opportunity to show themselves. If you've seen my videos before, you would know that I have talked about this a lot, the idea that we need to introduce a little bit of boredom into our lives, and that boredom is where good ideas spring from. The reason I bring that up a lot is because it's one of the most important things that I've figured out. Boredom is not this empty state that you should be striving to always escape. It is the raw material, it's the empty page in your head. You can't write your ideas on a page that's already been scribbled full of other people's ideas. That boredom and that blank, restless feeling you get whenever you don't have your phone or something to distract you, that's not a problem. That's actually what you should be aiming for. That is the metaphorical piece of paper finally being blank enough for you to actually be able to write something down on it. And you have spent years through cultivating your habit of scrolling, making sure that that piece of paper is never actually blank. I've also talked before on this channel about consumer mode versus creator mode, and those are two different states of mind, and you're always in one or the other. You're either consuming what other people made or you're creating something yourself. The phone is a machine to make sure that for as long as possible, you are locked into consumer mode. This is the same idea, but aimed specifically at your thoughts and at your brain, because when you're consuming hundreds of newspapers worth of other people's ideas per day, your brain almost forgets that you're allowed to write and to generate your own. Leaving your phone at home is what allows you to clear the page for once. Now that is step one, but that's not even the interesting part here. So here's the mechanism that actually changed how I see all of this stuff. It's not only that the phone fills the empty time before the thoughts can even start, it's that even when one does start, the phone actually kills it before you can even finish thinking it. An analogy to help you understand this is, imagine you're on your computer and you're writing a paper, for example, you're editing a video, anything where you should routinely be saving your progress. But one time before you get the chance to do that, your computer dies. And when you plug it back in and power it on again, it turns out that it didn't save anything and all your progress is lost and you have to start again from zero. That is exactly what your phone is doing to your brain and to your thoughts every single time. An idea needs a certain amount of time to develop. A good one and a worthwhile one will often take a few seconds and even a few minutes to develop itself, to connect to the other thing you know or to the rest of your content in your brain, and to turn into an idea that you can actually use. And what do you do the second that that thought comes into your head, that there's a flicker of boredom that is associated with that? You reach for your phone. You interrupt your own thoughts, and that idea that you have never gets to be considered in the first place. The bigger the idea you have, the longer it takes to think through it. So for your most powerful ideas, you might need several minutes or more of uninterrupted time. So they are always the first ones to get interrupted. The small little intrusive thoughts that only take a few seconds, those tend to survive, those are just fine. But the deeper ideas, the ones that would actually change something for you, those are the ones that never get off the ground. You interrupt every single one of them. I want to give this a name because I constantly catch myself doing this, and putting ideas and having a name for it is always how I begin to stop. So I'm going to call them half thoughts. A half thought is an idea that you started, but that you then interrupted before it could finish. It never had time to develop. It never became anything. It's not that you couldn't have had it, because you were literally in the middle of having it. You just didn't have the attention span or the motivation to finish it. And once you have this concept in your head and you can apply it to your own brain, you realize that it is full of inner thoughts. It is a graveyard of these unfinished half thoughts. You've been walking around for years, perhaps, assuming that you're not a very original person or that you're not a clear thinker, when in reality, you just haven't given yourself the chance throughout all this time to finish a thought. You're not lacking in any sort of creativity, you're just interrupting yourself. So that is a huge difference, and that difference is entirely in your hands. When I leave my phone at home, it removes one of the easiest ways and the most accessible ways that I have to interrupt myself. So for the first time in a while, my mind gets to coherently flesh out an idea. I'll be walking around and that spark of an idea shows up, and that used to be the exact moment where I would reach for my phone. But now there's nothing there, so the idea can just keep going. It can go and connect to the rest of the ideas that are in my brain. And 10 minutes later, I'll be sitting in the car and I'll have finally figured out an idea that maybe has been ruminating in my mind for months. It's not that I got any smarter, I just finally stopped interrupting myself. Now so far, I've only been talking about ideas, having original thoughts and creating things. But if you're not really the creative type, or you don't post online, for example, you might be saying, well, that sounds cool, Charlie, but how does this affect me? I don't need to sit around generating brilliant ideas or coming up with new content to post. I just want to feel less fatigued mentally. That's good, because this next part is for you, and that benefit of less mental fatigue is actually the more important thing for a lot of people. Not having your phone everywhere you go is not only so that you can produce ideas, it also allows you to process your life. Scientifically, your brain quietly does something in the background that you never notice because it is so quiet, which is it processes things. It takes the stuff that happened to you, or the conversation you're thinking about, or the thing you're worried about, and quietly works on them throughout those slower gaps in your day that normally we would call being bored. That's what those gaps are for. It's almost like a maintenance cycle in your brain. The mind uses that idle time to clean itself up. And you have deleted all that idle time. Every little gap, every moment that your brain would normally be having to think, you have filled with a screen. So nothing gets filed away, nothing gets filled, nothing gets resolved. It all just stacks up in the background, unable to fully process. You know that feeling of being a little mentally foggy and a little tense, and nothing's actually wrong, but you feel like something is? That is this. That is 100 little unprocessed things that your brain is still trying to figure out, which you never gave it the chance to close out. You feel foggy because you never let the fog settle. You kept on stirring it, and the phone is actually the thing that is stirring it. Every time you fill a gap in your day with more stimulation and more information, you are stirring up the fog just as you were about to clear it. When I leave my phone at home to go on a walk, for example, by the time I come back, my head is clearer than it would have been with any amount of doom scrolling. And I used to scroll, I would say, to relax or to wind down after work, which almost sounds like a joke now. I used to reach for the exact thing that was keeping my brain foggy, and I used to call it relaxing or a break, but it wasn't really a break. It was more input into my brain disguising itself as rest. Real rest for your brain is not more and more input. It's actually the absence of input long enough for your brain to finally catch up on whatever's been going into it. That's what a walk without your phone is. It's not emptiness, it's finally giving your brain the space to do the maintenance and to think things through that you haven't been allowing it to do for years and years. So at this point, you might be saying, okay, I get the point. I should just use my phone less. I should be more mindful and more intentional of how I use it. Maybe check it less during my walks. I don't think that's a very good approach for somebody who has built up this habit over months and years. And I want to tell you why. If the phone is in your pocket, it's not really about willpower. It's more like playing a game that you've already lost 1,000 times. You will not be able to use sheer discipline to resist a device that a team of really smart engineers around the world designed specifically to be picked up and to be looked at as many times as possible. That addiction is engineered. That pull that you feel toward your phone is not a weakness that's unique to you. That is an engineered phenomenon that a lot of people experience. But something I also want to be clear about, and a main message on my channel, is that just because something is engineered for you to be addicted, it's not an excuse for you to stay addicted. This does not let you off the hook, and you still need to fix it, because I can tell you all this and I can give you the knowledge you need and the information that you need, but I can't go to your house and make you stop checking your phone. You're not gonna win by sitting there in those boring moments with your phone and using sheer willpower to resist it. You will lose that battle very often, and then you'll feel bad about your lack of willpower, which is not relevant because willpower was not the right tool in the first place. You only have a limited amount of it anyway, so it's not a good long-term solution. The way that you win this battle is by not giving yourself the chance in the first place to be hurt or to be injured by the weapon that's against you. That's what leaving your phone at home does. You're not fighting the urge to check it now, you've removed the ability to check it. You've changed your environment so that the correct choice and behavior is the only behavior that's available. That's not a sign of weakness or of low willpower. That's being smart and carefully picking the way to battle that you've already lost 1,000 times, and that you also have a track record of losing. I know I sometimes mention this concept that the problem isn't necessarily you, it's more about your environment and how you've set it up, but I never want to hear that as an excuse, because your environment is yours. It's not an excuse. You have set up your environment. You built it, which means you are responsible for how it causes you to act, but it also means that you can rebuild your environment to be much better. I'm not going to pretend that leaving your phone at home feels very good at first. It didn't for me. Like I said, I would drive down the road and I would feel like something was missing. And that reaching for your empty pocket when the phone is not even there, that's your brain showing how deep your habit goes. You're reaching for it when it's not even there. The reaching for it was never about needing anything. It was just about a reflex and a habit that you built up since the first day you got a phone. And when you leave it at home, you're forced to sit there and deal with it and deal with your own inner monologue for once, with no exit and no easy way out. Every boring moment that previously you would escape through looking at some more information, you now have to be present in. There's no exit here, and this is exactly why it works. This is not a side effect, this is the entire point of my video. Because the opportunity to escape and that exit was causing the problem in the first place. When there is an exit door, you're always going to take the opportunity to use it. Leaving your phone at home doesn't ask you to resist the exit with your sheer willpower, it removes the exit. And once you do that, you finally do the thing that you have been avoiding for years, which is to just be a present person, just you and your mind, just for a little while at a time. The first few times this is uncomfortable and this is weird. I won't lie to you about that. But uncomfortable and bad are not the same word. The discomfort is like a muscle working. And by the fourth or fifth time you do this, it actually goes from feeling bad to feeling very liberating. It feels kind of like having some freedom. It stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like you have some space. And that space that you have now found is what gives your ideas finally that time to finish. You might be asking, what if there's an emergency, for example? That is a possibility. But up until about 15 or 20 years ago, throughout the entire span of human history, people left their homes without a way to immediately contact their emergency contact, and society went on just fine. You're not more fragile or more in danger than your grandfather. And I'm not telling you to go leave your phone at home when you're taking a new 3-hour drive through an unfamiliar route. I'm saying when you're on your weekly memorized route to the store. Use your judgment, but for the most part, the emergency excuse is not actually about emergencies. It's just the most reasonable way that your brain could find to justify always keeping your phone on you. Oh, I need it for the map app. Do you? On your walk around the neighborhood that you've lived in for years, or your drive around your hometown? You know where you're going. On a trip that you actually need, an unfamiliar one where you need the map, of course, bring it. This isn't black and white. This is the opportunity for you to use your judgment and sometimes not bring the tool that turns more from a tool into a distraction. What about work if they really need me? That does depend on your job. That is possible. But again, be honest with yourself. Is that really what's gonna happen? Or is that, again, just an excuse to keep your phone on you? I'm assuming you're not a doctor or fireman who's urgently on call at any moment. People will survive when you're on your 30-minute walk without being reachable, and so will your company. Here's what it actually looks like on the other side from someone who now does this quite a bit, so that you know what you're progressing toward. You leave the house without the phone, and for a while you do feel weird, you feel like you should be checking something. You will have to let that feeling be there for a while, and it's not like there's much you can do about it anyway. But instead of feeding it, you now have nothing to feed it with. And then out of that newly found quiet space in your brain, an idea shows up, a real one, an original one that you actually had. And for once, you don't interrupt it, and it gets its time to see its course. It connects to something else, and suddenly you're sitting there having actually figured something out. Some problem that you had been pondering for a while, or one that you didn't even know you had, all because you finally gave your brain a couple uninterrupted minutes. You'll come home and you'll feel like you had some mental clarity for once, because you did. That's the whole idea. That's what I mean when I say leaving my phone at home made me smarter. It didn't make me more intelligent. I didn't add anything. I just stopped absorbing everything, and I gave myself room to think. And all that thinking power was actually there the entire time. It was just behind a huge wall of other people's thoughts, of other people's newspapers worth of information, and 1,000 half-finished thoughts that I had that I kept interrupting before they could fully form. Leaving my phone at home did not turn me into a genius. It just allowed me to use the mind that I already had. You've got one too, and the same thing applies to you. Your mind is not broken, it's not missing, it's just blocked. And you are the one holding the block, which is actually a good thing, because that means you also have the chance to remove it. So next time you're leaving the house and you know deep down that you don't need your phone, try this. Leave it on the counter and walk out the house and let it feel a little weird. Then see what you think about and see what comes into your mind when you have nothing to interrupt yourself. I think you're gonna find out that you were never dumb or uncreative. You were just never quiet long enough to give your brain the chance to notice what was in there. Thank you for watching. If you're still here, please comment what problems or issues you're having in your journey, and I'd be happy to address them. Please subscribe for more similar content. I'll see you in the next one.